All right, everybody, this is the new Discovery Optics XED 6-36 first focal plane. It happens to be an MOA. This is brand new for Discovery Optics. It has a new system on top and the side turret as well concerning zero reset and also zero stop feature. So I'm going to very briefly show you. This is removable with just your finger tension. It's got grips on there. This is going to come off. If it's on too tight, you can use a coin or a large, broad, flat, or standard. I'm going to lift that off. Like I said, this one happens to be an MOA just because this was their first model. I shoot mills almost exclusively. And after my 3-shot zero, I did a confirmation of 5 shots just to make sure it's right where I want it. And it is right where I want it. This rifle typically shoots very, very tight. And this optic helped me do that. It looks like I was shooting on 25 power, which makes a lot of sense. That's about the max that I shoot on most of the time. The zero stop itself is now, instead of 3 pieces or even 4 pieces in Allens around the inner mechanism, now you just have a single stainless steel loop with a single Torx going through. And I think it's a great idea that they have Torx for hardware. So you're just going to tighten that down against the bump, kind of like you've seen on a lot of other optics. There's a little bit of a rise to the base, and then this is going to interfere with that and stop it. Remember to have it on the left side because your turret twists up. Oh, it's so weird looking at MOA. So many numbers. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and throw that on. Set it back with my witness mark on this side onto 0. And I'm going to twist this down. These are not lift to operate turrets, so you don't have to worry about it being in a certain position. It's just going to function. And I function test after setting 0 to make sure my numbers are lining up, which it looks like they do. And I'm going to dial out quite a ways, make sure that they're still lining up. Right on there. Minimal backlash on this particular one. The backlash is not the inner mechanism. I believe it's just the housing and a little bit of milling there. So it's not super, super tight, but it's still pretty crisp. And the thuds are very distinct. And like I said, it does line up on the witness marks on that large housing with this, oversized turrets. That's pretty good. Let's go back down to 0 and make sure it lines up on the witness line. It does. Now I'm going to count how many MOA I have. One thing you'll notice here is you have 2 lines of numbers, so you can get 2 revolutions by keeping track on the first line as you twist around. Then on the second line, it's 25 MOA per revolution. So let's go around once. There's 25. There's 50. There's 75 MOA, and I'm on a 20 MOA mount, by the way. And an additional 16 on top of that. It's plenty of range of travel. That'll get me out really far, actually, even with 308. It's quite a bit of internal travel. These have, I would say, between... There's an advertised range, and then I would say functionally with glass clarity, you could expect to get a minimum of 32 really usable mils out of this. Great for 22 or ELR shooting because of the large internal elevation. And again, glass clarity wise, I think you can make it work out to around 32 mils pretty well. You could push it further. It's just going to diminish the glass and the quality of the image a little bit beyond that. Now that I think of it, I'm wrong. I've got a 20 MOA Savage rail and a 20 MOA mount. I've got 40 MOA built into this, and that's why I have so much internal travel left over. Normally it would just be on a 20 MOA rail, and that would still be enough to shoot really, really far, especially with this reticle. But the fact that it's on a 40 MOA mount allows me to grab a lot of that usable internal elevation and then also use the reticle on top of that. It could go quite far with this setup. I'm excited when I finally get one in mils to run that out, possibly past a mile. All right, guys, I'm going to do some shooting here at 220 yards from where I'm at and just double check that I like what I'm seeing, and then I'll run over to some long range. Couple shout outs before I get started. These are the Intrepid BT's Bluetooth compatible headphones and hearing protection from Warbird. Warbird sent out some awesome stuff over the last 6 months. Check them out if you need hearing protection, eye protection, vests. They have all that stuff. Alacritas Innovations. So Alacritas is one of the sponsors of this video, as well as Discovery and Warbird. A couple other people. Thank you, Savage, too, for rifles. This is the micro adjustable rest, and I've been using it a lot lately. I love this thing. It's so consistent, and if you want to add some consistency, take away some variability to your shooting, highly recommended. Now, I'm at 630 yards, and from what I can tell right here, it's not terrible. It's probably in the gusts. It's kind of bad, but it's probably 10 to 12 mile an hour averages, something like that. Maybe even like 8 to 12 averages, and then the gusts, you'll see it. The gusts get pretty wicked. They're blowing everything over. I'm having impacts at 100 yards that were going 4 inches to the right during the gusts because it's just so strong. So I'm gonna do my best here. It's MOA, which is weird for me because I'm not an MOA shooter, but if my math is right, it should be 18 mils or 18 MOA. Sorry. 18 MOA at 627-ish yards. I'll just shoot an IDPA size target. I've got some factory second 175 grain SMKs, maybe not even SMKs. There's something like that loaded up, and they're going to do just fine on this. I'm mostly looking at resolution, clarity, field of view, just trying to get a feel for what I think of the reticle on this XED 6236. So here we go. So obviously my data is somewhat on. We'll see this where this next one lands. I'm trying to figure out that wind. I didn't exactly see which hit that was on the target, but it sure looked like it flipped left. Let's try this out. I'm going to go with 18 MOA of hold. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'll do 18 MOA of hold. I'm just going to hold over with reticle instead of dialing. Kind of look at that subtension stadia, see what I think about the contrast on kind of a mucky brown, black, dark, gray, contrasty background. I guess the target's blue, but other than that, everything's pretty dark and muddy up there. Ooh, that was bad. That was real bad. Those are going pretty high. I'm holding the same spot, so I'm thinking that might have been ammo related, but I'll try one more with the exact same hold. Those are pretty much landing in the same spot, right above the head to the right. So I do like the Stadia. I like the holdover. I like the reticle. I mean, I'm familiar with it for sure. But going into MOA is just a little unique. It's different seeing bigger numbers rather than working with mils. Let's send one more here. Wind is kind of back and forth. It's a little bit unpredictable. not bad. Not bad at all. Actually, it's a pretty good image. And I'm on 21 power to achieve that holdover. So 21 power is what was necessary to get enough field of view to back off a little bit and be able to follow up on those shots with a little bit of movement. Those of you who really want to know, I'll go ahead and give a turret audibility test just so you can hear what they actually sound like. Definitely tactile, clicky, more thuddy than clicky actually, and minimal backlash. Again, I think that's in the turret housing, not the actual mechanism. It's just this ring that sits on top that you actuate, you grab, the barrel sitting on top. The turret cap has just a little bit of variability in this one, but this is kind of like the early production model, so I'm not too surprised to see that. That's something they can always improve or do better, or maybe it is different on other ones. I'm really happy with the design of the scope so far as being a big heavy scope on big heavy rifles. I like it because it helps reduce recoil a little bit, even on this 308. Okay, and I'm on 6 power right now. 6 power is usable for the center stadia. I'm going to have difficulty contrasting enough with the windage in the tree. I can't quite read those numbers very well. That's kind of okay. As long as I can read it by 8 power, I'm usually okay. 6 power, yep, that's pretty light. Field of view is decent. Looking around the exterior of the glass, it doesn't look egg-shaped to me. It doesn't look wacky with big distortions. There's just some minor distortions. I can see a little bit. Head placement isn't super finicky. It's actually, eye box seems pretty, seems pretty doable on low-end power. And again, this is a 6 times erector, so it's quite a bit. Let's move up to 8 power. And by the time I get to 8 power, now I can start to use some of the the windage holds. They're very, very small. They're very fine. Eye box is still comfortable. Image is still very good. Field of view is still acceptable. And when, people make a scope, they got to try to decide, are they going to favor field of view? Are they going to favor eye box? Or there's just always something. There's give and take with every optic design. Not to get into the minutia about that. I'm not an expert in the manufacturing side. I'm just trying to tell you what I see. When I look through the scope, the bezel is just a little bit thicker. I can see a little bit of internals when I really go to the extreme sides, but eye sensitivity is not terrible. I flipped the scope around, looked at it from the other side in. It actually looks fairly clean. I didn't see fingerprints on any of the lenses or anything. Didn't seem dusty, so I think they're doing a good job at executing the optic, making it clean in a clean manufacturing facility, which, believe it or not everybody does that. Okay, we're on 8 power. That looks pretty good. Again, center stadia, main stadia, crosshairs are very usable. Center dot's still pretty tiny, but I could use this in a hunting scenario. Closer distances for sure. Let's move it up to 12. 12 is a range I use a lot. And 12, now you're really at home. On 12 power, functionally, I can get all the way down to the chevron at the very bottom of the pillar on this reticle. I'm looking for distortions. They're very minimal. Field of view is acceptable. I'm moving my head around, just trying to get a look at different things inside the glass here. That color is actually, it's decent. Color is decent. Trying to remember the price point, and that's a consideration going into all these, overviews. Yeah, it's pretty decent. Contrast and sharpness, like the sharpness of the edges and the detail that I'm seeing down there of grass, clay pigeons, and all that, even on 12 power, it's right in there for me. I would actually say this makes a lot of sense for the price point. This is good. If this was HD glass, we wouldn't be close to what we're seeing right now, that's for sure. Got to have that ED glass. Let's move up one more time. I like this increased magnification lever. A little bigger size, has 2 supports on it for torques, so it's very well secured. I'm going to go up to 20 power. Give it a peek. That ring moves pretty smooth. On 20 power, I can still get a solid 26-ish MOA, more like 25 MOA. Can still see plenty of it, and if I have to hold towards the bottom of the reticle, I'm probably doing something wrong in the first place, but if I had to, I could make shots like this and be comfortable. You 22 shooters or doing ELR 22, you're going to be just fine with something like this. The numbers all contrast really well. Reticle makes sense. Everything stands out well at this magnification. The dots are a really appropriate size. Field of view is not obstructed. It's a pretty decent reticle. I'll push it all the way up to, I'm not going to go to 36. I'm going to go just a touch off, like 35. At 35, eye sensitivity is, it's noticeable. Head placement, getting behind the rifle, it's going to be noticeable, guys. I'm going to have to mess with parallax here for a second. So truthfully, I'm probably not going to use this magnification or that much magnification on a heavier recoiling rifle just because it's hard to follow those follow-up shots. The eye sensitivity is a little bit noticeable. Not a deal breaker, actually, especially on lighter recoiling rifles or 223s, things you want to do target practice with usually, but on your heavier recoiling rifles, it might be a little more than you would want for eye sensitivity or head position sensitivity. The reticle still looks great. I like the subtensions. Color's still good. There's a little distortions. Now I'm noticing a little more of the distortions. Color doesn't look quite as good right here to me. Still not egg-shaped. It's not funky shaped. And sharpness is still usable for sure. It's not terrible. But the targets and the particular items I was looking at around 20 power just looked cleaner and sharper and better color and all that. It looked a little better than. I think this is just slightly foggier. Not a lot, a little bit. And for one last test, I'm just going to run this out towards max range. It's plenty. Remember, I've got a 40 MOA base on this, and I'll back it off a few MOA. Let's do that. Okay, and I'm going to have to adjust this real quick. Well, for this design, the image is definitely not in that optimum territory. I definitely notice distortion. I definitely notice eye sensitivity here. I need to back off to, let's go to 24 power, and it immediately looks a lot more usable, which is good. Let's go back up to maybe 30-ish. Yeah, when I'm dialed out to extreme ends of range, it's not the best image actually. Go back to 24. It's much more usable right there. So I would say if you're trying to max it out with max magnification and max dialing for elevation, then you're going to try to hold over. Nope, probably too much. That's probably just really stretching this beyond what it should do. If you're willing to sacrifice one of those things and just not hold over all the way, then the center of the glass is still optimized the best. There's a slight ring around the edges of the glass on higher power, and it's not terrible. It's not a deal breaker for me, but yeah, I'm going to say just drop the magnification down a little bit. Use your dialing, but don't dial to the extreme ends of the range. Leave yourself a few MOA or a few mils towards the end there, and the glass will still be pretty good. It's still going to be pretty sharp, and you're going to have enough contrast and detail, color, all that you can still see your hits or your misses at extended ranges. And one more shout out to my friend Max over at Lux Gun. I'm using that tripod from Lux Gun. I used the rangefinder module that Arca's into the Sunway Photo plate here. Thank you to Sunway Photo for sending stuff out. And then I've also got the Vanguard 10x monocular there, which I'm using to film all this stuff today for distance, and it's just a really nice piece of glass. The Sunwave photo plate allows me to put a camera on there as well as a spotter, and then the LuxGun Hunt is extremely lightweight. If you haven't watched that video yet on the LuxGun Hunt, you need to go ahead and watch that right now. So I'm looking through an Element Theos, and I am going to say that there's a noticeable difference in sharpness. I've gone back and forth a few times on this one, but I think the colors, they just pop more. Yeah, sharpness is definitely something like the actual detail. If I was to do an acuity test between the two of these, the Theos is definitely sharper. And that's not something debatable to me. It should be. It's, you know, something like, I think MSRP is something like maybe $1,800 more, maybe $2,000 more. So you want to get a lot for that. But the iBox is generally more comfortable. Let's push it up to 36. It's not as dark. I think the XED is a little bit darker than this one is. And I don't want to come off like I'm ragging on the product. I'm telling you the truth about what you get, you know, what you pay for kind of thing. Up to a point of diminishing returns where you just spend more and more money and you don't get that much more. So, to be honest with you, I could probably shoot similar size groups on paper this close at 630 yards between this optic and that optic. When I'm in good conditions right now. In good conditions, I could probably shoot similar group sizes. If I was shooting for like an animal, or I was looking for a critter, or was having some sort of detail where I needed to contrast, like I can see the little tiny pebbles and rocks on 36 power. It's not very dark. I can just get a brighter image with this one. The edges of things are clear. The edges of this glass compared to the edges of that, there's a noticeable difference there on the edges. And this glass isn't absolutely perfect either. It's just very, very good. The reticle seems bolder to me. And when I go down to 6 power, this reticle has 20 mils of holdover, but I can see the dots better on this one. There's thicker lines on this reticle. And this is one of my favorite reticles, so you know, I'm totally biased, but I can just use it a lot better on 6 power. But when am I going to use 6 power at 600 yards? Somebody might ask, and that's a great question. I don't know. More often than not, I'm up to 10 or 12 power. If Mirage is really bad, I'm at 10 power. The image overall is going to be superior on these scopes. The iBox is a little bit better, but it's not a lot better. It's just a little bit better on the Theos than it is for the XED. So for the amount of money that you're saving, you can put a lot of money into training and ammo with an optic like that, and that's going to be one benefit. This also has a lot more internal elevation, and I mean a lot more. The XED has, you know, available something like, let's say 35, 36 mils as it's advertised. In that range of available internal elevation, usable for image, it's going to be a little bit reduced there, but it's available. You can get at it. And this, although it's advertised with right around 28, 29 mils of elevation, you can't use all that. You're locked at 23.2. And that's what it's going to run out at because of the design internally. And so it's a great image in the full range of travel. You just can't get that far with it, which 23 mils plus the holdover. I can use this really far with the PRC. With that, I could actually shoot further. The image quality is the trade-off there for the price, so I get a lot more internal elevation. It's a 35 millimeter tube. This has a bigger body size. The footprint is just, you know, a lot bigger. The weight is a lot more. There's a couple things about it, but it's not a terrible design. There's a few smart updates that they did with the 6-36 that I think are awesome. And this one has totally toolless resets. So I don't need to use any tools for either side at all. I can do it just with my hands, even including the 0 stop. This one, I need one tool to set the 0 stop. So there's just a couple differences there. This focuses down really, really close, down to 10 yards. And the Discovery focuses down to 40 yards on this particular model. So there's some pros and cons going back and forth here. I'm just going to tell you that I do shoot the Theos quite a bit. It's on a couple of my guns that I like to compete with or do long range with, but I don't feel like I'm held back too hard by something like this, and I do actually want to try this out at ELR distances, because that's when I can really look at the image quality and degradation of the image as I'm dialing out there and get a better feel for what is the difference between the glass here and capability for sharpness, color, resolution, and all those kind of things. So far, iBox is one of the biggest differences that I can notice. Depth of field is better on this one. Color, sharpness. Yeah, everything's a little bit better for sure, but is it worth the extra couple $1,000s? That's something you're going to have to ask yourself. And if you're like me and you're on a budget, more often than not, I'll deal with a little bit of the lack to get something that has a lot of great features. And so that's the trade-off here for folks who are interested in that. That's why I'm not shooting, let's say, the Schmidt & Bender 6-36, and I'm shooting the Theos, because I was willing to take some trade-offs, and I like this one. What it can provide is sufficient for me, and I'm pretty happy with it. On certain rifles, I'm going to be pretty happy with something like that too. So you can see how it plays out in my own personal life. Here is a target at 600 yards. Actually, yeah, from where I was at, 600. So this is 600 yards, a little under 6 inches. Looks like it might be closer to 5. So 5 inches sub MOA at 600 yards. That rifle actually can shoot a lot tighter than that, but I was fighting wind. So these right here, they felt like good trigger pulls to me. Could have been the ammo. I had just some bagged up ammo. It wasn't boxed up. It was bagged up for a reason. They're factory seconds. So maybe I actually would probably attribute these to a little bit of wind. The height of the group, I'm okay with. Other than that one, I'm okay with this because it's only about a 1-inch deviation in height, and that's about what I would expect. The spread for windage is not great, but I was having to kind of check as much brush and vegetation as I could to read that wind. And normally I'd expect these to all be in the circle. That's what I would expect. But I could see every single hit as it appeared. I could see my trace through the air. I was able to stay in the glass, and I was shooting that on 22 power. So on 22 power, I'm pretty comfortable with that. I could spot those little dark spots hitting the paper, and if I pushed it up to 30 power, I could definitely pick them out. 36 power, it's a little dark. The glass is or the eye position is more sensitive behind. And so I back it down a little bit because I like it better for target shooting in particular. And I can live with that. I'm fine with that. So actually, good job to Discovery Optics on a 636. It's their first attempt to make one of these for a first focal plane with a functional reticle, good light collection to be able to shoot and keep up with the conditions I'm in. I'm just fine with that. I think I'm actually pretty happy with it so far. I'm going to go run a couple more groups, but this is at least possible. And on a better day, I think you would see better groups for sure from me with that rifle. With a better rifle, with better ammo, you're probably going to do a lot better than that if you have the fundamentals down.
Okay, everybody, that's what I have to share about the Discovery XED 6-236 first focal plane side focus illuminated reticle. There are some things that I left out that I'll be discussing in future videos. I just didn't want to make this another 40-minute video because I usually lose people by that point. Anyways, it's just a lot of information to take in. So with good time, I'll share a little bit more of my experience with this optic. Obviously, I'm hoping for a mill-based optic to actually use it practically. I just don't shoot MOA. I can, but it's not my preference. But lots of people, according to the market sales research, a lot of people like MOA, so this might be something up your alley if you've been looking for a good 6-36 with 56mm objective. Remember, this has 35mm tube. This might be something that is interesting to you. It's under $1,000 from what I understand, and that's coming in pretty competitively with that aspherical front lens, and then you have XED glass inside, lots of internal elevation, a couple unique features about this scope. And for me, when it comes to scopes that are 6 to 36 or whatever, I don't care about weight. I want them to be lightweight if they're like a 2 to 10, but a 6 to 36, yeah, make it heavy. I'm good with that, and I don't mind at all with the weight or the size and footprint. That wasn't a bother for me. I actually do have some 35 millimeter rings that are normal. They're not a one-piece mount like what you see there. I'm probably going to try that out later and just bring it down a little bit more comfortably if I do run this out to ELR distances. So like I said, pretty decent optic, good experience with it so far. I can shoot sub MOA at 600 yards, and I'm happy with the light collection that I saw. There's a couple things about it. When you compare it to a $2,000 or $3,000 optic, yeah, you're going to see some of the differences between really high-end optics and more expensive glass. It's just a matter of, is that worth it? Do you need that $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 optic, or can you be pretty content with something that's under $1,000? My guess is most people can be pretty content with this, and I think it's going to be a good seller for Discovery going forward. Good job to Discovery, and I'm interested to see what else they bring out in 2025.